All right, we now bring in retired Marine Corps Lieutenant Colonel Stuart Scheller. He joins me now. He's also the founder of AuthenticAmericans.com. Colonel, let's listen first to Arkansas Senator Tom Cotton, who appeared on NBC's Meet the Press just yesterday. Here's what he had to say about the controversy over Monday's ceremony at Arlington.
They wanted President Trump there. They wanted to take those photos. You know who the families also invited? Joe Biden and Kamala Harris. Where were they? Joe Biden was sitting at a beach. Kamala Harris was sitting at her mansion in Washington, D.C. She was 4 miles away, 10 minutes. She could have gone to the cemetery and honored the sacrifice of those young men and women. But she hasn't. She never has spoken to them or taken a meeting with them.
Well, they did meet with them during the dignified transfer.
Because of
they were with them at the dignified transfer.
Her and Joe Biden's incompetence that those 13 Americans were killed in Afghanistan.
So these things have changed a little bit. A White House official told NBC News that the president and vice president were actually not invited to begin with. So if that's true, one has to wonder why they weren't invited and why those families would not have extended them an invitation.
Well, thanks for having me on. I think President Trump got it right when he said that the Afghanistan withdrawal, August 26, 2021, was one of the worst days in American history. I know many of those families. I know that President Biden and Vice President Harris did not reach out to them. And, you know, a lot of people talk about Vice President, what could she have done in the withdrawal of Afghanistan? She's a sitting member of the National Security Council. For them to pull all military troops out before American citizens, to abandon Bagram Air Base and to withdraw in the reckless manner that they did, it still stings me every time around August 26th. You know, I made some comments on that day 3 years ago, and I was put in prison. I was forced out of the military short of my retirement. And quite honestly, if I were to die, I'm not even allowed to be buried in Arlington Cemetery because I didn't get an honorable discharge, just for pointing out the long list of mistakes that were made. So I know a lot of people are still angry. I hope President Trump can get in there and make the long overdue changes needed in the military. But Vice President Harris has no chair to sit on, no platform to speak even on this matter. She should have just stayed quiet.
I always say this, the ugliest truth is better than the prettiest lie. And there's no faster way to lose the confidence of American servicemen and women or veterans like yourself than to misrepresent your service. Yet we are seeing examples of this play out right now with two stars of the Democratic Party, Maryland Governor Wes Moore and the Democratic vice presidential nominee Tim Walz. Wes Moore claimed that he had a Bronze Star. He never received one. And Tim Walz, the man who wants to be the next vice president, said he carried weapons in war, even though he served in the National Guard. Now, both have since admitted to having been mistaken because they were confronted with these misstatements. Let's start with Wes Moore, though. The New York Times unearthed a document. And by the way, this is the New York Times. Important to keep that in mind. From 2006, where current Maryland Governor Wes Moore apparently told a pretty tall tale. Moore was applying for a White House fellowship at the time, and he wrote, quote, "I could not be more proud of what my team and I accomplished in Afghanistan and the lasting legacy we have forged. For my work, the 82nd Airborne Division have awarded me the Bronze Star Medal and the Combat Action Badge," end quote. The only problem is he was never awarded the Bronze Star, and repeatedly he failed to correct several interviewers, Gwen Ifill and Stephen Colbert to name two of them, who mistakenly identified him as a recipient. Then there's Tim Walz, who we know has blamed poor grammar and his enthusiasm over combating guns in schools on his repeated claims of that he carried these weapons in war. We know that not to be true. Several times he was confronted by a CNN anchor, and she went at him a few times on this. He refused to apologize. He said, "I refuse to apologize for my service. I'm very proud of my service." And certainly this is not a statement about the people in the National Guard that serve our country. We're very grateful for them. Here in New York, they've kept us safe on the subway. Why do you think people take this tack, and why isn't the truth enough? You served your country. Just say that. Why the embellishments?
Yeah, this is a hard one for me because I don't like to attack other veterans, but I have a Bronze Star. I have a Combat Action Ribbon. I have a Commendation for Valor. I've fought in Iraq and Afghanistan. So when people misrepresent their service, it is a tough pill to swallow. Kamala Harris, when she was attacking President Trump, I'm paraphrasing her, but one of her statements was that we should be honoring veterans and military members. And the quickest way to dishonor them, one, would be to pull out of Afghanistan in the way that we did, and two, would be to misrepresent your service. So I think both Walz and Moore are liars and cowards, and that's probably why they're such good politicians.
Well, the other thing that we've heard about Tim Walz, and he said it himself, he gave a very lengthy speech at the DNC, talked about IVF and how he's so grateful for IVF because that's what gave him his children. His wife underwent IUI, a totally different procedure. There's nothing wrong with IUI. Many families use IUI to get their children, and anyone could be sympathetic to somebody in his position, millions and millions of Americans. Do you think that that was an error? Could he have gone into a speech at the DNC, the biggest speech of his career, and never maybe had a conversation with his wife about that? Don't you think she would have corrected him on that?
Yeah, I think he has a long list of being caught in lies. I mean, they're all politicians, but I think America is thirsty for real leadership, real change. We can see all the problems. And when we're consistently lied to, it stings. And so on all these topics, yes, it's troublesome.
Well, to use a word from the man who wants to be the vice president is certainly weird. Colonel Stuart Scheller, thank you so much. And we'll be right back.
Hi, folks.